Darshan.
The data which is collected for the first time.
The data which is collected by any agency or institution for the first time is called primary data. So now, then, along with Riya, what is it again? Yes. Fatima, what is secondary data?
The data which is used by any agency or institution is called secondary data.
Okay, the data which is collected by one institution or agency but used by other institution or agency, for the user institution it is secondary data. So now, then, Mohit, what is the difference between primary and secondary data?
Data is for the first time and secondary data is reused.
Okay, that is an original data collected for the first time and secondary data is the reused data for the.
And forms are firstly they are raw and in secondary data they are classified and tabulated.
Okay, primary data is raw data and secondary is classified and tabulated for the.
Primary are reliable, more reliable and they are not much reliable.
Primary data is more reliable and secondary data is comparatively less reliable and less relevant also. Okay, you'll see in primary data inquiry is directly done from the unit and in secondary data it is done from primary data. And one more point of difference.
Expenses. In primary data there are more expenses and money and in secondary data there is less.
Correct, very good. So now, primary data requires, collection of primary data requires more time, money and energy. Collection of secondary data requires less time, money and energy. Anyone else who can tell me all the differences, raise your hand. Now, three methods we studied yesterday: direct inquiry, indirect inquiry and question. So, last second bench. What is your name? Okay, Rudra, I mean, right? So tell me, what is direct inquiry? Correct. The method where the enumerator or investigator directly collects the data from the respondent is called the method of direct inquiry. From here, Jamvi, what is indirect inquiry?
In this method, the enumerator collects the information about respondent by other sources.
Yes, about the respondent through or from other sources who are well acquainted with the respondent is called indirect inquiry. And what is questionnaire?
Questionnaire is the questions which are arranged logically and the answers specifically.
Questionnaire means the set of questions which are arranged in a logical order with the space provided for the answers. Now raise your hand. When you send questionnaire by post, there are two methods, by post and by enumerator. What things are required to be sent in post along with the questionnaire? Along with the questionnaire, what else is required to be sent in the post? Raji.
In post, if it is envelope, then questions and stamp.
Correct, very good. You need to send envelope bearing the stamp as well as the address of the enumerator so that they don't have to incur any expense on the same. One more thing we send along with that, which I forgot to discuss yesterday, that is letter of request. When you send the questionnaire by post, a covering letter should be there. It is called as a letter of request, wherein you request the respondent to send back the questionnaire as early as possible. Further in that letter of request, you highlight how is that questionnaire survey going to be useful to them also. Because if it is useful to them, then only they would be ready to fill it up and send it back to you. So, when you send that questionnaire, in the envelope, three things are sent. One is the questionnaire itself. Second is letter of request. And one more blank envelope is sent on which the stamps are already fixed. And the address of the enumerator is already printed. So that the person or respondent does not have to spend any money on the stamps, and also he does not have to waste any time on writing the address of the enumerator. Okay, so once again, when you send the questionnaire by post, total three things are sent. What is that? First, envelope bearing the stamps and address. Questionnaire itself. And one more thing, letter of request. Is everyone clear with that? Take out your textbooks, we'll take up the things further. And if you remember, I told you chapter 1 and 2 will take up simultaneously. So now chapter 1 is basically over. These are the main three methods which we have to study. Other than that, now we have to understand its advantages, disadvantages. So every day 1-2 topics I'll take up. And second chapter of statistics, which is a practical chapter. Numericals, problems and solutions are involved. That we will start today. Okay, simultaneously. So, page number 4. Until difference we had already done. So as I said, few points I'll take up from this first chapter every day. The chapter from my side is already over. All the 3 methods I've explained you. Main second chapter, which is a practical chapter, also will start today. Okay. So methods of collecting primary data, do you find on page number 4, everyone?
Yes.
There are many popular methods for collecting or collection of primary data. Commonly used methods are direct inquiry, indirect inquiry, inquiry by telephone or email, which we call it as also by post, method of questionnaire, inquiry by local news reporters, etc. But we shall study the following 3 methods of collecting primary data, that is direct inquiry, indirect inquiry and method of questionnaire. Now direct inquiry, I shall not be reading the complete portion. The meaning of direct inquiry I'll make you underline and will understand its advantages and disadvantages. So underline the first sentence. In this method, an investigator himself or an enumerator appointed by him visits personally to the field. Field here means respondent. Field, units, respondent. All the 3 means one and the same. You visit the units, or you visit the respondents, or you visit the field. All are synonyms of each other. Okay? So he personally visits to the field and collects the necessary information. Is that clear to every one of you? One example also which we will read and you can write in exams. For example, if a person wants to collect the data about the condition of farmers of Sanand Taluka of Ahmedabad district, then he must go to Sanand Taluka, contact the farmers and obtain the data regarding their condition. The information obtained by this method is called data collected by direct inquiry. Any confusions in that? Anyway, we have seen in very much detail yesterday what is direct inquiry. Okay? Now next page, look at its advantages. First, the data obtained by this method are accurate and reliable. Underline accurate and reliable. Why? Because you are collecting on your own. Secondary data generally is not accurate and reliable. Moreover, in direct inquiry, you are directly approaching the respondents. So chances of accuracy and reliability also increases. Second, due to face-to-face interview with respondents, enumerators can solve any question or doubt or any confusion by giving proper explanations. You face-to-face contact the respondents. So if they are having any doubts, suspicion, they are not able to understand your question, then you can explain them face-to-face, clarify it and still get the answers from them. That will become a disadvantage in questionnaire by post, because there is no one to solve their doubts or suspicion. But here, face-to-face, you are in contact with them. So if they have any doubt or suspicion, you can on the field clarify that and still get the answers from them. So and then solve any question or doubt. Then, by personal interview, enumerator sometimes gets supplementary information of the respondents, which may be useful at the time of interpretation of the results. And then supplementary information means additional information can also be obtained. For example, you ask the question about the income of a person. You doubt that he may be telling you lies. Looking at him and his personality, you doubt that he may be telling lies. You ask the person, what is your income? He says 10 lakhs per annum. Then you look at him from top to bottom and you find that he is in a shorts, Bermuda and over there standing. Looking at his personality, you doubt that he may not be earning 10 lakhs per annum. You can ask supplementary questions. You can ask 2-3 more questions. Which was the last vacation you had gone? And suppose he says, lastly I had gone to my village. You can ask 2-3 more questions. Last 2-3 years, any foreign trips you have done? He said, no foreign trips. Which car do you own? He says, 2-wheeler only, I don't have a car. So now that doubt or suspicion is clarified, that what he was relieving, that income is 10 lakhs per annum might not be really possible. So if you doubt on the things or the information which the respondent is giving you, Then in direct inquiry, what happens? You can ask supplementary questions and clarify those things also. Get additional information also. Any confusion in this? And then supplementary information next. This method is much better when the field of inquiry is limited. So unlike field of inquiry is limited, means you have to face personally contact the individuals. So if there are, let us say 50,000, 60,000 people, it becomes very difficult. But if you have to approach 500 or 600 people, you can collect direct inquiry. What shall you do when you have 50,000, 60,000 people? Indirect inquiry or questionnaire. Because there, instead of approaching 50,000 people, you can approach 1,000 people who know 50 people each in indirect inquiry. Or you can send the questionnaires by post and get the information. So when can you use generally direct inquiry? Only when the field of inquiry is limited. Limited means there are less number of respondents. Any confusion in that? Next. Sometimes when respondents are unwilling to give particular type of information, the enumerator can get such information indirectly by asking supplementary questions and giving assurance against the misuse of information provided by them. So, unwilling to give information, asking supplementary questions. So, same example what I gave you right now about the income. Now, suppose you ask income to a person and he is unwilling to disclose that. This is such a sensitive matter which people generally don't disclose because they may immediately doubt why you are asking. Are you from income tax? Why you are asking the income? So if you ask income of someone, they may not be readily necessary or readily to part with that information. Here, how can you get the extra information or come to know about his income? If he is not willing to give that information, you can motivate him that we are not going to give your information to the income tax department. Why we are asking you income is so that we can offer you certain products and services which come within your reach. Okay, if you are not capable to buy that products, we shall not offer you those products. So certain extra things you can communicate with them. You can try to solve their suspicion and still get the data about the sale. So when the respondents are unwilling to give you information, you have to motivate and convince them to get that information. That is not possible in indirect inquiry and questionnaire by post, but it is possible in direct inquiry. Is everyone clear with this? Disadvantages. First, this method requires more time, more number of enumerators when the field of inquiry is very wide. So, underline more time, enumerators, inquiry wide. So, as we discussed, if you have 500, 600 people, one person can collect it. If there are 50, 60,000 people, still you want to go in for direct inquiry only, then you require at least 100, 200 enumerators for the who can visit 500, 600 people and collect the information. Then, this method is more expensive, and more expensive compared to indirect inquiry, and questionnaire is more expensive because you have to visit everyone personally, face to face. And third, the information collected by this method may be less reliable if enumerators are untrained. If enumerators are untrained means you are not able to motivate and get the information. Like I said, you ask income, he is not able to reveal it. He is not ready to reveal it. And you are not able to convince him also to give that information. Then untrained enumerators will not be able to get sufficient information by direct inquiry. So that becomes a limitation if enumerator is not trained. Is everyone clear with this? So, how to remember this answer now? Okay? Understanding is done. Now we need to remember this answer. So advantages first, how to remember, understand it. Advantages of direct inquiry. You can remember it as you are lovely students of sir. This sentence you can remember? What sentence? You are lovely students of sir. Now what are the advantages? First, unwilling. If respondent is unwilling to give information, you can motivate them, you can convince them by asking supplementary questions and still extract the same information from the respondents. So U stands for unwilling. Okay. Second is reliable and accurate. Whatever information you obtain by this method would be reliable and accurate. Is everyone affected with that? Then lovely means L. You will not write lovely, you will simply write L. So you'll say it involves less expense. Compared to other methods, it involves limited inquiry. Limited field of inquiry. As we discussed, if there are 500 or 600 people, you can go in for direct inquiry. But if there are 50,000, 60,000 people, then you have to go in for indirect inquiry. And if you want to go in for direct inquiry, then you require more enumerators to collect the slip. So L stands for limited field of inquiry. Then further, for students means you remember? Yes. So you can solve any doubt or suspicion which arises during the course of inquiry. You can solve any doubt or suspicion which arises during the course of inquiry. And again, officer, so again S stands for supplementary questions. You can ask supplementary questions and get the information from the respondents. Is everyone okay with that? So, how will you do the markings? In the first of all, at the top in advantages, write down this sentence, you are lovely students of sir. Okay. Now, U stands for the fifth point. So, in the fifth point, left side, write down U and underline unwilling. Okay. Then R stands for the first point. On the first point, left side, write down R and underline reliable or circle reliable. Accurate and reliable, you already underlined. Circle the word reliable. Then again, L stands for the fourth point. On the left side of the fourth point, write down L and circle the word limited. Okay, limited field of inquiry. Then again, S stands for students. S stands for the second point. On the left side of the second point, write down S. Circle the word solve any question or doubt or any confusion by giving proper explanation. And again, last point, sir, S stands for supplementary information. So third point on the left side, write down S and circle supplementary information. Any confusion in this? Okay. Disadvantages are only 3 in number, so no need of any short form. Okay, first disadvantage it is requires more time, more enumerators. Second, it is more expensive. And third, if enumerators are untrained, then they will not be able to get the information. Any confusions with that? So, once again look at it, I'll be asking it to you and you'll close the textbooks. First advantage, U stands for unwilling. What is the advantage if respondents are unwilling? Then enumerator can motivate them or convince them by asking extra questions and get the information. R stands for whatever information is obtained by direct inquiry is reliable and accurate. Direct face to face you get the information. L stands for limited field of inquiry. So if the field of inquiry is limited, then this method is appropriate. Then S, solve any doubt or suspicion. So enumerator can solve any doubt or suspicion arising during the course of inquiry and still get the information. And last, S stands for supplementary questions. If the respondents are not able to understand, you can ask supplementary questions and still get the information. Any confusions with that?
No, sir.
Should I ask you again? Close your textbooks. Ayushi, first point, advantage.
U means unwilling and R means reliable.
Unwilling, explain it. Unwilling means How is it an advantage? Yes, you can motivate and convince him by asking extra questions and get the information. Correct. Then, Namrata. Second,
It is reliable and accurate.
the information obtained by this method will always be reliable and accurate. Then, Hit.
If there is any doubt, we can solve any doubt of respondent during the course of inquiry.
You can solve any doubt or suspicion which arises during the course of inquiry. That stands for students S. So, you tell me one more point.
And stands for limited field of inquiry.
The method will be useful if the field of inquiry is limited. Then, what is your name? Yes. Sorry? Sheetal. So, one more point.
As for suspicious,
Supplementary. Supplementary questions can be asked to extract the information from the respondents. Any confusions in that? And what is the first disadvantage? More time, money, and enumerators are required. Second disadvantage, more expensive. Third, if enumerators are untrained, you will not be able to extract the correct information. Any confusion in that? You'll learn this and come in the next period. We shall start with the second chapter. Okay? So give the heading in your notebooks. Chapter 2. Related to chapter 1, now nothing else you have to write in the notebook because all the points we will do from textbook only. So chapter 2, which is presentation of data. Statistics is collection, then organization and analysis of data collected with predetermined objectives. First step collection we studied in the first chapter. How to collect the data. Direct inquiry, indirect inquiry, question, right? Now second step is organization. That we will study in this chapter, which is presentation of data. Because how is the data when you collect it? Raw, unorganized, haphazard. And we need to organize it, we need to present it properly. So how to present the data properly in statistics we'll study in this particular chapter. Okay? There are 3 parts of this chapter which we are going to have. One part is classification. Second part is tabulation. And third part is graphical presentation. Three ways we will study how to present the data. Okay, first part is classification. This is always for a quantitative data that we studied in the first chapter. Tabulation is always done for qualitative data, which is represented by attributes. Okay, and graphical presentation is for both quantitative as well as for qualitative. What we shall be doing is, are your schools starting from 19th?
Yes.
Any school starting before 19th? Which day? Which school? Gujarat Public School. Any other schools? Tomorrow. Which school? Sheshwar. Tomorrow means Monday. Okay. Any other school? Yes? Sir, when? From 15th. Okay. So, what I shall be doing is, this chapter has 3 parts. It's a very lengthy chapter. And I want to start with accountancy also, the other practical subject, so that when it is there in your schools, you don't find much difficulty in that. So, first part of this chapter, classification, we'll do it thoroughly. Then we will take up the subject of accountancy. Test of classification will be done in the class. And once accountancy's 2 chapters are also over, then I'll come back to statistics and finish with tabulation and graphical presentation. The chapter is very lengthy, and generally we shall be devoting more time in accountancy. The reason, there are 20 chapters in accounts and 9 chapters in statistics. Okay, so the proportion is automatically 2:1. If we are doing 1 chapter of stats, then along with that we should be able to do with 2 chapters of accounts. First chapter of stats would be over along with classification, whatever theory learning part is remaining. So simultaneously we'll see that we also take up with 2 chapters of accountancy. Right? So what we shall be doing is we'll be starting with classification today, and that we will finish in next 4-5 days time, and then we'll shift to the subject of accountancy. You can note down this, and today we shall start with classification. Yes, did every one of you note it down? Now to explain you the meaning of classification, first I'll discuss 2 terms with you. After that I'll explain you what is the meaning of classification. Okay, so first term is we need to understand what is variable. And variable throughout the chapter would be denoted with xi. Throughout the chapter, variable would be denoted with the xi symbol. Okay. What do you mean by vary? Or what do you mean by varies? Vary or varies means? Differs. Okay. What was the meaning of data we studied in the last chapter? Information or result based on some characteristic. Okay, so you understand the meaning of characteristic? Like height is one of your characteristic, weight is one of your characteristic, marks is one of your characteristics. Okay, your religion is one of your characteristic, but that is qualitative. That is represented not by numbers but by attributes. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, that is not numerical, that is attributes. The other things which I said, height, weight, marks, that is numerical. Right? Now does that characteristic vary or differ from unit to unit, means student to student or not? Yes. It is called variable. So what is variable? The characteristic of a unit which varies, means differs from unit to unit. Okay, repeat. The characteristic of a unit which varies from unit to unit. Okay, any unit of population. Now unit you understand in the last chapter we discussed. Unit, respondent, field. All the 3 means one and the same. So any characteristic of a unit or respondent or a field which differs, which varies from unit to unit is called variable. Okay, for example, as I said right now, number of children in family. Do all the families have same number of children? No. Does it vary or differ from family to family or not? Yes. Here what is the unit? Family. What is its characteristic? We are talking about number of children. And this characteristic varies or differs from unit to unit, family to family. Is everyone clear with it? Yes. Number of flowers on plant. Here what is the unit I am talking about? Plant. The unit is plant. What is its characteristic I am talking about? Do they vary or differ from plant to plant or not? Yes. Okay. Height of student. Here what is the unit I am talking about? And its characteristic? Height. The characteristic height varies from student to student. Okay. And weight of students. Here again what is the unit I am talking about? Student. And its characteristic? Weight. That differs or varies from student to student. So this is the meaning of variable. Any confusion in this? No. Once again, what is variable? The characteristic of unit which varies from unit to unit. Is everyone clear with this? Right now. Heading variable first, write down in bracket xi. Shall I indicate the meaning? Okay, write down the characteristic of unit of population or sample, the characteristic of unit of population or sample which varies from unit to unit is called variable. Full stop. It is denoted as xi. It is denoted as xi. Any confusion in this? All are clear with that? Okay. Now run these examples, 4 examples of variable. Did you all write this down? Anyone who is not clear with the meaning of variable? Anyone who wants me to explain this again? Without recitation, ask your doubts, okay? Now there are 2 types of variable. There are 2 types of variable. One is discrete variable and the other is continuous variable. Okay, there are 2 types of variable. One is discrete, the other is continuous. Now what is the meaning of discrete and continuous? Explained in textbook, which is not understandable. But they have explained that discrete means any variable which can assume countable or definite values. It can assume countable or definite means fixed values. Okay, the variable which assumes countable or definite or fixed values is called discrete variable, and continuous means variable which can assume any value in a range, in a specified range, and here it can assume countable or definite values in a range. Now what does it mean? For simplicity, you remember that discrete means it cannot be in decimals. Just initially you remember to understand this concept. Okay, then I'll explain what is the meaning of these 2 words. What is the meaning of countable and definite, and what is the meaning of any value. And this can be in decimals. Now see the 4 examples which I have taken out of the 4. Number of children in family. They can be in decimals or cannot be in decimals? Cannot be in decimals. Either you'll have 1 child or you'll have 2 children. 1.5 child is not possible. So what do we call it as? Discrete. Now suppose you are given a range 0 to 10. Now suppose you are given a range 0 to 10. Then what all number of children are possible between 0 to 10? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11 values are possible. Are they countable?
Yes.
Are they definite or fixed number of values?
Yes.
That is called discrete variable. People have 9, 10 children also. Lalu plus Kalyana. So, discrete variable means it can assume countable or definite values in a range. Okay, the first 2, number of flowers on a plant. Either you'll have 1 flower or you'll have 2 flowers. Number of accidents on a road. Either you'll have 1 accident or you'll have 1.5 accident is not possible. So these are the examples which can assume countable or, now you understand the meaning of this?
Yes.
Now 0 to 10, height of student. It can be 5 feet 1 inch. It can be 5 feet 1 inch and few centimeters also. So between 5 to 6 feet itself, how many values are possible? Uncountable. Any value is possible in that range. Okay, if you take weight between 50 to 60, then person can have a weight of 50.1 kg also. Person can have a weight of 50.11 kg also. 50.123 kgs also. So between 50 to 60, it can assume any value. And those any values are not countable, they are uncountable, they are infinite values. Therefore, we say it can assume any value in a range. And for simplicity, what did I tell you? It can be in decimals. So these two are the examples of and these two are the examples of discrete. Okay, but how would you define a discrete variable? It can assume countable or definite values in a range. And continuous variable, it can assume any value in a range. Means it can be in decimals. Any confusion in that? So all of you are clear with the discrete and continuous variable, okay? Discrete means you'll remember it cannot be in decimals. It's in simple language, but otherwise actual meaning is it assumes countable or definite values. And continuous means you'll remember it can be in decimals, but actually it can assume any value in a range. Okay? Now, one more term we need to understand for classification, which is frequency. It is denoted as Fi. Variable is denoted as Xi and frequency is denoted as Fi. Now, you have been coming across this word again and again. Your parents also keep on asking you how frequently your friend rings you up, how frequently you visit WhatsApp, Instagram, we have seen that yesterday, and move on to Snapchat. Or you'll find your parents asking you how frequently you go to tuitions, that will be less in frequency in vacations, times, etc. So this word you come across again and again, how frequently? Means what are your parents trying to ask you? How frequently you do this means? How many times you do this, right? So same is the frequency. The number of times one observation of a variable is repeated. Suppose I collect all of your marks and I find that there are 7 students getting 40 marks out of 50. How many students are getting 40 out of 50? 7. So what is the frequency of their observation? 47. How many times that 40 observation is occurring in the class? 7. So frequency means the number of times one observation of a variable is repeated. Okay, repeat the number of repetitions of a particular value of variable. One more time. One more time, repeat it. The number of repetitions of a particular value of variable. It is called as frequency. Is everyone of you clear with that? And it is denoted as Fi. Okay, down. The number of repetitions of a particular value of variable the number of repetitions of a particular value of variable is called frequency. Full stop. It is denoted by Fi. Understood that, everyone? Now we can understand what is classification. The term variable, who is not clear, raise your hand. The term frequency, anyone is not clear? Now, first time when we collect the data, it is a raw data. First time when we collect the data, it is raw data. Okay? Now, what is classification? What is organization? I said to you, writing it systematically in proper form. Simple meaning of classification means the raw data is haphazard. We also call it as ungrouped. It is haphazard, or we also call it as ungrouped. When you group it and write it in a systematic form, it is called classification. Now, how can you group it and write it in systematic form? Suppose I collect the data of 15-20 students. and when I collect the data, it comes in this manner: 50 marks, 62 marks, 80 marks, 40, then again 50, and so on. I get of 20 students. The last marks is, let us say, is this raw and ungrouped haphazard or not?
Yes.
Now I present it systematically. How do I present it systematically? Marks, which is variable. It varies from student to student. And number of students, that is frequency. Means how many times that marks is repeated in the class. This I classify as minimum is 30, so I start from 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, and 90 to 100. And then I write how many students are getting marks between 30 to 40. Suppose 3 students are getting the marks between 30 to 40. 5 students are getting between 40 to 50. 10 students are getting between 50 to 60. 8 students are getting between 60 to 70. 2 students are getting between 70 to 80. 1 is getting between 80 to 90, and 1 is getting between 90 to 100. Then this table is called classification. So what do you mean by classification? Grouping of raw data into variable and frequency. You group the ungrouped data, raw data, haphazard data. And how do you present it? You present in the form of variable and frequency. Variable could be either discrete or continuous. Is everyone of you clear with this? Any confusion with the meaning of classification? Once again repeat: grouping of raw data into variable and frequency. Once again, grouping of raw data into variable and frequency. And practical questions on this will do. Let's start from Monday. Okay, how to do practical questions on this? We will be doing it with the help of telemarks. We will be doing it with the help of telemarks. Now what is this telemarks? You will be given this set of 50-60 observations. So we shall not be doing that first observation 5, we'll read the whole question 5, 5, 5, 5, how many times it's repeated. We'll not do it that way. Because if there are 10 observations, different variables, then you have to read the whole question how many times? 10 times. What we shall be doing is we'll be reading one by one observations, and telemarks means we'll do one telemark against that observation. So if you read observations 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you read the first observation, it comes as 5, you'll do a telemark. Second observation is 9, you'll do a telemark. Third observation is 7, you'll do a telemark. Fourth is 6, fifth is 10, again it is 5, then do one more telemark. So we'll not be reading the whole question 10 times for that. We'll read the question only one time. And wherever the observation occurs, against that we will do a telemark. Once you get fifth telemark, you'll put a cross. So one group of telemarks will be a set of 5. Then again 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll be making a telemarks in set of 5 each. This is how we will solve the practical questions, which we will see from Monday. Any confusions in that? Very, very simple and very, very schooling. Okay, so meaning of classification right now. Then we'll wind up today's lecture. Meaning of classification. The process of grouping the raw data in systematic form of variable and frequency is called classification. Any confusions in that? And how to group it in variable and frequency we will take up on Monday. Monday what I'll do first, one more answer we'll study learn by heart. Chapter 1. Today we studied advantages and disadvantages. That you learn by heart and come and ask you on Monday the evening. Like I asked you difference, today I ask you advantages and disadvantages of direct inquiry. Monday we will take up indirect inquiry in detail. Advantages and disadvantages of indirect inquiry in detail. And simultaneously we will start with the practical questions of this. Bye everyone. Bye.